Hello and welcome to another episode of the Rollin' 20s. We are the show that has people who are so unlikable we couldn't even get roles on the latest team of Generation X. I am Jeremy. I'm sitting here by myself editing the latest podcast we cut on the Doctor Strange film. I am getting ready for a trip this New Year's to the Land of Mouse, and I am working hard on editing the panels that we took from this year's Great American Comic-Con in Las Vegas, Nevada, December 3rd and 4th at the Cashman Center. We were asked out there by the owning company of it, Celestial Comics, so that we could host panels and meet some Silver Age heavyweights as well as modern comic artists and all-stars. And the very first panel I had the honor of hosting was So You Want to Create Your Own Comic Book with three very special people. At the very beginning, you'll hear the voice of Mr. Steve Englehart. He was the writer on one of the most notorious Doctor Strange stories of all time, Time Doom. It's one where Doctor Strange followed another sorcerer back in time, and that sorcerer actually became God. Wait till you hear about what he and the artist Frank Brunner did to some of the controversy that surrounded it. You'll also hear people that come in later. First up is Mr. Billy Tucci. We met him during the last Great American Comic-Con. He is the founder of Crusade Comics, and he is the creator of a 90s icon, She, which he is working on creating a modern movie for. And then we also got to meet for the first time Mr. Barry Kitson. He actually began his work with Marvel UK and Marvel's British Spider-Man comics, and then he moved on to several others before finally settling into a pretty long-term gig where he was doing the art on 2000 AD. If you don't know what that is the anthology magazine that had the first stories of Judge Dredd. So this was an eye-opener to me because it involved two people I'd never met before, but I was so curious to meet. So sit back, relax, this is the panel. So you want to create your own comic book. We'll see you in a few. So, since I don't want to keep people in suspense the whole time, how many people are aware of who this gentleman is?
Hungry. That's it.
Okay. This man has actually helped redefine a number of characters from Marvel Comics. He took a bunch of relative unknowns and turned them into some pretty memorable characters. He did have a falling out with Marvel that created a big break in his work until a publisher at DC begged him to continue work for them. This man was nominated for 7 Eagle Awards, and he's won 2. He's the winner of an Inkpot Award. He is the artist on one of the most notorious Doctor Strange stories of all time, titled Time Doom.
The writer.
The writer, sorry. This is Mr. Steve Englehart. And the panel today, as you heard, is about So You Want to Create Your Own Comic Book. Do you have an independent press you're working right now? Or?
I do not, no. I said to Chandler, I'm not necessarily the best guy for this panel. But apparently he'd invited another writer who canceled at the last minute, so I'm the designated writer here.
I see.
And apparently I'm the designated artist too, but...
Looks like there's a little bit of a solving going on.
Anyway, I will do my best to talk about this subject and anything else that people want to talk about.
Okay. Can I ask one question while they're apparently still shuffling the right people in here? Because I was following up on one part of your history, and I have to know if it's true. I will only accept it from you because the Internet has only so much truth allowable, I guess. Was it true that in regards to Time Doom, you actually wrote a letter with Frank Brunner to the letter section of Marvel Comics pretending to be a Catholic priest?
Yes, that's true.
I see they're pretty good ones too.
Yeah, good. No, I'm glad I'm not the only one who's eating lunch in this panel. Marvel in those days gave you complete creative freedom. And I mean, it really was, nobody ever complained about anything. And then we heard that Stan was worried that Dr. Strange had met God, and he was afraid some people might take offense at that.
Okay.
And he was thinking about, I think he was only thinking about putting a note or something in a future issue. He wasn't talking about changing the actual book. But we were young and we liked having complete creative freedom, and we didn't want to have it curtailed at all. So it was Christmas time, and I live on the West Coast, and I was going to fly back to the Midwest where my family was. I was going to have to go through Dallas to change planes. So I wrote this letter purported from this priest going, "What a great comic book, you know, it brings God home to everybody, and we were glad to see this," and all that. So I mailed that from Dallas so I wouldn't have any fingerprints on it. And Stan liked it, and so he didn't put a note in, and so that was, you know.
Oh my goodness, learning something new every day. The other gentleman who came in, a lot of times we talk about people who are a big deal in both Marvel and DC. This gentleman is actually a huge deal when it comes to British and English comics. He helped define characters who have been in 2 movies, and so far at least one of those movies has actually been good. This man has been one of the illustrators on 2000 AD, and he helped birth the universe of the megacities and Judge Dredd. This is Mr. Barry Kitson. And on the other side there is a gentleman we met last year. He is a trifecta when it comes to comic creators because he has worked for a major company, he's been recognized by critics, and he's created a well-recognized pop culture character. He has won all 3 of those accolades. He's the founder of Crusade Comics and the creator of the character She. That is Mr. Billy Tucci.
They brought us our lunch and
Yeah.
said we have a panel. I'm like, oh my God.
I know, the moment I'm actually early to work is when they're giving out food.
Maybe you should go get your food and we'll just handle it while you...
Someone tells me that would be rude, but that's personal. Mr. Tucci, you founded your comic book company in a 1-bedroom apartment.
Yeah. Yes.
Every time I imagine that story, I'm just imagining most people who are laying out their apartment, okay, the fridge needs to go in the kitchen, my bed needs to go over here, and I'm going to put my comics company right there next to the living room.
Yeah, pretty much. That's the way it was. I had a bedroom, and which was my bedroom. It was a small bedroom, but I'm like, that's just where I'm going to sleep. And then the other room was, I had a TV and file cabinet. Remember the flat files? Barry, remember you had your big, what do we call that back then? I still have it. It's in my studio in a corner now. It's just a big file cabinet of just a reference file of just every magazine I had found since high school. If I saw like a Volvo, I had a folder on Volvo cars and a folder on airplanes. You know, but it was P-51 Mustangs, and the other was German airplanes. You know, each specific type of airplane. Types of rifles, guns, you know, all that.
This is why Billy's such a big success, because I had a similar filing system, except for I never actually put anything in folders, so I just had piles of magazines.
Oh, did you?
That I knew there was something good in to get reference from at some point.
Yeah, you have. I'd love to go through it, because I bet you I captured a nice, from the from the 80s into the early 90s of just magazines.
Yeah.
But then I also went to FIT. I went to a college in the city, Fashion Institute of Technology, and there was a lot of fashion magazines that we would use for reference, and ones from the 60s and all, and everyone that was just discarded left, I just took it, Vogue, so I would just rip them out, and just different types, one on swimsuits, and one on, tuxedos, different types, shoes, but I did that, and plus I was 6 months behind my rent when the book first came out. What I did is if you want to make comics, I tried to get work at Marvel and DC when I first started. And no one liked my style. I was a fashion illustration major. And I would go there and they told me that it wasn't a Marvel style, or asked me, well, can you draw like Jim Lee? And I'm like, oh, God, I wish I could draw like that, but I can't.
Yeah, they told me that when I worked at the law firm. They were so disappointed.
So they told me that basically it was San Diego Comic-Con 1993, and I had my samples, and again rejected. One editor, who shall remain nameless to this day, was looking at it. It was a fight in a warehouse. And he said, hey, Jim, to another editor, look, another warehouse drawing. Oh, man, if one of you guys bring me another warehouse, I'm going to punch you in the face. To all these guys, young guys and gals trying to get work. So nothing came out of it. And then I was on my way home, and I was dejected, and I said, let me do my own book. And I decided to, and I had no idea how to publish a comic book. That was before the internet, so I went to the library and looked up books on self-publishing or magazines, and I'm a reference nut. And I basically learned what do you do, and I learned all about Diamond, and I went to the local comic shops, where do you get your comics from and all. And next thing you know, I had my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, type up a letter, as she was the director of marketing for the new Crusade Fine Arts. And, well, we fooled everybody. And when you look at the first issue of my book, She, and I have assistant editors and copy editors and this. It was all my friends, just so it looked like a really big company, you know. But yeah, it was fun. And son of a gun, if that book didn't take off when it hit, because I remember going to other publishers too, smaller publishers that are now gone, they're defunct, and tell me, well, girl books don't sell. And another one, he wanted to publish it, but he would own half the property, and I would start getting royalties. Over 70,000 copies is when you start getting royalties. And I'm like, I think I'll do it myself, and did it. So I self-published for over 10 years, over 100 issues, and that's all I did. And you just get burnt out doing that, just doing one character. But fortunately enough, I was able to make a bunch of friends, and I could do things that, Marvel, DC, and, do a lot of covers and write a lot of books and draw them. But now I'm doing She again with Kickstarter. Because now we're coming back and we're launching a new Kickstarter series on my character. It's basically a modern-day samurai story, if anyone wants to know. It's called She, S-H-I, and it's going to be, 20 years, because it was 20 years ago when the book came out, 20 years after my first storyline. So now my character, Anna, she'll be in her mid-40s, she's married, she has a daughter, and her warrior past is way behind her, and then it all starts to come back. So it's sort of a comic character grows up, I guess, and it'll be interesting to do that, because she had a costume and all that, and that's not going to be in the new one, but just some fun stuff for her trying on the costume. Like, what the heck was I thinking, So...
Okay, well, I asked one question, you answered three. First of all, awesome.
I just keep talking.
That's okay. You said the costume isn't it? Did you update it for the new Kickstarter?
Yeah, for the new story, they'll be wearing a lot of armor, samurai armor, but there'll be flashbacks, of course, because, people did change my life by buying a character that looked like that. So there will be flashbacks to that, and some fun stuff with the red and black costume that she had.
I don't suppose we're lucky enough you have any of the designs at your table, do you?
I don't know. I might have the one of her daughter in her costume, I think I do. But it's like sort of samurai armor type of thing, and it's a ghost story because there's a lot of ghosts involved in it. And it's fun. It's fun.
You totally piqued my nerdy curiosity.
Yeah, it's cool. It's good. It's all about Japanese mythology, and the story is also a ghost story. So that she was haunted by these ghosts of slain samurai in the past, and now all that's involved in it, and it's fun.
Oh, Mr. Kitson here, you worked on a series that started independent but was bought out by DC midstream.
Well, no, this is more of a cautionary tale of if you want to create your own comics. Mark Waid and I created a property called Empire, which is currently under production as a major movie.
I will say I read it as it came out. I enjoyed the hell out of it.
Thank you. But we began publishing it with a company called Gorilla, which supposedly was financed. This is kind of the reverse of your story in some ways, Billy. It was supposedly financed by a multimillionaire who was going to give us a fortune and produce these comics. And he was telling us, "Oh yeah, I bought offices in LA and." You've got this, that, and you've got other. Do you want radio adverts? You want TV adverts? And then after we'd produced the first two issues, we found out that he actually didn't put any money into it at all.
Oh,
God. And the money we had come from the editor he had hired, who'd mortgaged his own house.
Wow.
To try and fool us into thinking there was all this money.
Whoa.
And so after two issues, we discovered that we'd run up all these printing bills, and so Empire wasn't actually bought out by DC. I actually went to DC and said, look, I don't have enough money in my bank account to publish the next issue. Do you guys want to take it? And they were kind enough to take it on, and so they then published the next 8 issues, which was great. But then we fell into the next thing of, if so you want to produce your own comic, was that in return for publishing it for us, they withheld the rights. So as long as they kept it in print, Mark and I couldn't do it anywhere else.
Same thing that they did with the Watchmen.
Very probably, yeah. But things come around, and last year or the year before last, they were kind enough to give us the rights back, and so we produced more of it at IBW. But it's kind of the reverse pitfalls of trying to produce your own comic. You have to be very careful about what's actually.
Yeah, Neil Adams is screaming to this day.
Yeah.
All right, so when it comes to producing characters, I mean, I should say producing comics, obviously you have to have a story and the designs, but what are the first actual hurdles after you've managed to assemble your first book and you're looking to self-publish?
Probably better for Billy.
Yeah, I think
this one.
this is Billy's big.
Yeah, well, what's great for you guys now, if anybody want, and I would totally recommend if everybody wants to write Spider-Man or draw Spider-Man, that's great. But you make far more money and you keep everything it's supposed to, is if you create your own character and publish it. And what is so fantastic now, though, is that you have the webcomics and you have the internet. I mean, there's Eisners now for best webcomic.
Yeah.
And you don't have this, because the biggest money is the printing costs.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we could draw it. I could sit and draw it at night after, if I'm working on something else, I could spend 2-3 hours a night and work on my own little pet projects or something. But what's great about the internet and with Facebook and social media and Instagram and Twitter is that you could build that audience without spending any of your own money. I mean, granted, if you're a writer and you don't think that you're the best cartoonist or the best illustrator for the job, and you'd rather find someone, then you pay them, or you partner up with them or something like that. But what's so great about with this social media monster, this that you have now, we now have, is you could really fuel that and make that just explode and become a phenomenon before the book's even out. I mean, you'll reach more people via Facebook and through whatever. I'm sure that there's web publishing sites or something, right? There's got to be webcomic sites like an online Marvel or something maybe, than you would if you sell it in a comic shop. I mean, is there even 2,000 comic shops in the United States anymore? I don't even know. And if it does well, then you could build up your thing and say, well, now we're going to print it. And we're going to do a Kickstarter to print it. So if we need $4,000 to print it, and then you get that thing going, and if you hit your goal early with the Kickstarter, then that just pushes you up into the Kickstarter omniverse or whatever, and you're getting even more other people from outside who would not necessarily buy your book. Wow, look, this is an interesting project. They hit their goal on their first day for this new story. Well, I'm going to put $10 into that. And if you get 100 people like that, or 1,000 people additional, you could really create a phenomenon with it. And that's the way I would go. I think it's a lot easier today to publish a book because you could Google how to publish a comic, and you can Google how to publish a webcomic. And especially you young people, you got all these great ideas. Put them out there, even if it's a page a week. You produce a page a week. Do it. I get out there, and then maybe you get the attention of IDW or a Marvel or a DC. But then you'll still always have your own, creative property. You'll have your own intellectual property.
I actually tried the Stone Age version of that when I was at school. I just did a comic strip. Pinned it on the school notice board every day, and that, people started reading it.
Yeah.
So, when are you going to put the next one up? That kind of.
You described it as Stone Age. It makes me feel like I'm a Bronze Age product. But when it comes to actually building your own story, how much of a written script do you need to translate into 21, 22 pages of visual storytelling?
That's how long's a piece of string. It depends what's happening in it. I mean, I've worked on and off most of my career for the last 25 years or so with Mark Waid.
Right.
And Mark trusts me to do an awful lot of the heavy lifting. So, I mean, I've told this story at other conventions. My favourite piece of script I got from Mark was pages 5 to 17, they fight. And then in brackets he put another $1,000 for me. And so I mean it's different, but it differs. I mean sometimes it depends what the writer wants. some writers will write very, very specifically exactly how they feel a scene should be played out, from the angles, everything, which I don't like so much. I much prefer.
You like to have some creative license,
or
or
the choice of the pacing and
okay.
That so. Yeah, I guess it depends how closely you work with the writer. I mean, obviously, in Billy's case, where he's doing both, they're fairly close, but they argue a lot.
It's pretty well. Scream at each other too up there.
I mean, in the case with Mark and I, we kind of have a competition between us to surprise the other. So, if he gives me a plot, then I'll try and come up with what I think is a smarter way of doing it than he put in it.
Nice.
And then he'll see that, and but I can change the dialogue to make that even that little bit better. And so, to go back to your original question, you can start with a very small piece of information and then build it as you go along.
Okay.
No, you spend any time with Mark, you could just see he must be a lot of fun to work with.
Yeah.
Just have a conversation with him, and you get to see what an interesting thing he's got. Whatever's going on in his head. And he's got that real great dry sense of humor and all, and so it'll be fun working with someone like him.
So it sounds like there isn't a real set guideline, but if you had to self-publish something new nowadays, obviously digital would be the way to go. How do you drum up interest beyond just producing a few pages and putting out websites?
I don't know. I haven't done it yet. I would get all your friends, and I would just do like, say you have a cute picture of you and a puppy, and then your friends share it, and I would ask your friends to share it, give it a read, give it a review, send it out to Newsarama, to these whatever sites they had, these comic book sites. Hey, have you seen this on their message boards? Hey, have you seen this new comic, Flashbang? Oh, what's that? Oh no, you got to see it. Here's a couple of pages of it, or do it yourself.
Yeah,
get it onto the news, get it onto the websites, on the comic sites, on the Facebook pages, all these things. There's so much. It's a great, very fluid community. I would get it out there and try to reach as many of those people as possible. It's a lot of work. You got, but you get it. What I've always learned and experienced is that I get out of life what I put into it.
Yeah.
And same thing with a piece of. With a drawing, right? The more you put into it, or the more engaged you are with this piece of artwork, the better it comes out, and people see that, as opposed to like, oh man, and then you're like, that was okay, that was pretty good, as opposed to one that could really knock someone's socks off. And that's what I would do, just try to change the world with your own stories and all, and it's a lot of fun. It's a great way to make a living. I mean, here we are in Vegas. You know what I mean? Like, wow, you want to go to Vegas?
Yeah, and another little bit of suggestion is show your work to professionals at shows if you can. Most professionals are actually really nice people who will give you good advice, and you've only got to convince one, I don't know, Alan Moore or someone like that your book, what you're doing is great, and as soon as he says, I actually love this book that this guy nobody's heard of is doing, then suddenly 10,000 people are going to take a look at it overnight. And
also another thing I've learned with us is that we're all fans too. I got it because I'm a comics fan. That's how I got it. So I've made some of my best friends with people that bought my book, and I never met them before. But you sign some page, some books with some people, and you're just talking to them. The next thing you know, you see him in the bar if you're old enough to go, and you're like, hey, can I buy you a beer? Yeah. Then you just start a friendship and just engage these creators if there's someone you like and you like their opinion, because everybody wants to help their friends out, and you become friends with these people.
Yeah,
I'd help, of course. Look at this really cool little thing, and then say, hey, Charlie, look at that, and they'll show it to their friends and all, and it's all networking, and don't be a pain in the butt, or want it too much with that hard sell.
Yeah.
There are those people that have that hard sell, but just be a regular person, and we're all very accessible. Editors too, and just come to a show, talk to them. That's why they're here. Maybe you're like, oh, thank you for that. Can I buy you a water or a cup of coffee?
Yeah.
It's really it's always appreciated.
As I say, before I ever had anything published, I went down to London because there was a London. It wasn't even a convention. It was just like a a dealers get together in Whitechapel like once a month, and I knew other people who were interested in comics were going to be there. And the first time I went down, I met Alan Moore, Brian Bolland, Dave Gibbons, Steve Dillon, people who I've been friends with for 30 years, and they were already publishing stuff, but they were genuinely pleased to find somebody else there who was interested in the same thing.
Yeah, cool.
And the general advice, like Billy says, is if you do that, just be natural and don't push yourself on people, and you'll be welcome very probably.
Mm-hmm. Well, what about the other side of that? Because you're three very notorious creators, and if you take your work to the shows trying to get an opinion and you get a lot of general negativity, not a whole lot of constructive criticism, how would you reapproach your work?
Well, I'll give you the perfect example. What happened to me was I took my work down to the Society of Strip Illustrators, and the president at the time took one look at it and said, "Go home, you will never get any work. This is terrible." And I was at the point of breaking into tears because I was basically a school kid at the time. And no sooner he said that than Brian Bolland was walking by, and Brian just kind of looked over and goes, "Oh, I rather like that." And it kind of taught me that lesson that you can't please everybody all the time. Mm-hmm. And so if you get negative, every now and then you're going to come across some guy who is going to be negative just because he feels like being negative.
Yeah.
But 9 times out of 10, people will be creative. And what you've just got to learn to do is to let that one person go off your back. And it's like, you must know from doing She. If you had 1,000 people telling you it was a beautiful comic, you'd get one guy saying,
they left the T out in the SHI. Oh, then you're like, oh. But on the other hand, if everyone's telling you the same thing, if you meet 10 pros and and they all say, a hand only has 5 fingers on it, then maybe you should listen to that. If they're all saying the same thing is off, then look at that. But what you should also do is, if you are coming in with your own book, make sure it looks as good. It doesn't have to be the same style, of course, as the worst Marvel comic being published today. It's got to be, and I don't mean in that it's a mirrored image of it, but because I love cartoony styles. Yeah. I love guys like Jeff Smith and Darwin Cooks. I love this. I'm so fascinated by guys that can do that with a few lines. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then I also love Jim Lee. I love the guys, the real detailed guys and stuff too. But if it's got to be something that really pops and looks good and looks clean, and it doesn't necessarily have to look like Jim Lee's. It can look more like Jeff Smith's work, but as long as you achieve what you're trying to get, the look you're trying to get, and you do it professionally, it'll just from there on.
One of the mistakes a lot of people make is when they show people their work, they go, "Oh, this is my old stuff. It's not very good." It's like, well, don't show us that then. Just show us the stuff that's good now, because.
And if you do want to be an artist for Marvel or DC, all you really need is 4 pages, right? 4 or 5 pages of your best stuff, your newest stuff. Don't show him anything you did a year ago. Work on stuff for a month or 2 before and bring him 4 pages. And if he says, "How long did it take?" He says, "I could do a page a day." Just say that.
The classic mistake, this is a true story, is somebody showed me their 4 pages, and it was a story set in the jungle. And in the bottom of a lot of the panels, there was this sort of angle. And I said, "What is this?" And said, oh, there's a tiger in that cage. And I said, "Well, you really need to establish that there's a cage with a tiger in it." "Oh, I can't draw tigers." Why is this your sample story?
So we've covered that printing costs are probably not as necessary in today's age of internet. I think you're right about that. What other materials do people need to gather when they're getting ready to produce their stories?
I think that's probably a righteous.
The expression on your faces, I feel like I just asked a Jeopardy question.
I was saying before you guys got here that I haven't done my own comics, so I'm here to be the writer, but you guys are here to talk about how you actually do this sort of thing.
In my case, the main things I've been known for creating have been sci-fi, which I tend to go for because I can create the entire world. I don't have to worry about having exact reference, which Billy is great at. But
I got a whole file of it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
In a folder.
So what I would gather together would be all my thoughts about how the world is going to work, how it's going to look. So I've got a general idea so that when I get to page, I don't know, 5 of issue 3 or something, I don't suddenly go, I hadn't thought how they were going to get water to this world or something like that. You know, you try and work it out in advance. And that's the kind of material I would pull together. Whereas I'm sure Billy, you know, for his war stories and things, has pulled together.
Yeah, well, that's because I'm known for drawing. Well, I guess I got established for drawing women for the most part. But I mean, I love drawing tiger tanks. I'd rather draw a tiger tank any day over a model, a runway model or something, and Messerschmitts and things. But also, I've been doing this for 22 years, and I've been using Photoshop for 22 years. But the only thing I know how to do in Photoshop is scan my art in and play with the levels. I don't even know how to clean it. My wife made my banner that's hanging on my booth because she's like, I'll try this. But I would learn that. If you could do everything and learn Photoshop, because also, like, if you're going to color your own stuff, like when you have an idea, like when we used to paint and everything, and you have an idea what your look is going to be, but you don't have the time necessarily to do it, or you don't know how to do it, like in my case, so you'll hire a colorist to do it. And it's always something like, you look at the best stuff and you get to see the guys who color it themselves, and it's so great. And someday I will, hopefully. I think all I need, everyone said I just need to spend a month after work learning how to do it, and just cut. I don't even know how to cut something out, I just been so, fortunately for me, I think, is that it really took off. The book kind of became an overnight sensation after starving for 2 years to get it done, but once it hit I just took off running. So I never had the time to spend a couple of weeks because I was already, I got to solicit the next book. I got to do, I got to I have to edit the letters page. I have to do this. I have to get the printing prices. I have to get the advertising. So I did that for, like I said, 11 years of just doing the self-publish, which I still do self-publish small things, and would again turn it up next year. But learn Photoshop, learn Illustrator, create your own logos, make it very personal. Because people love something when it's really personal and it's good and it's honest. They love it, and they see that honesty in it, and then your enthusiasm, because enthusiasm is contagious. If you're enthusiastic about something and you're talking about a story, if you have a story that you really love, or and all of a sudden you feel, oh my God, that and it's cool. It's very communal, and which is comics are totally like that as well.
Speaking of which, is there still a prospect for a She film? Yeah,
we actually was a year ago, right before the show, we signed a film deal. So, this is my third producer. We had a producer way back in '98. We first had a film producer. It's funny because they option it, for like 3-4 years, but they pay you pretty good. So you're like, I don't know, I've been sitting around waiting on this, but it's like, well, we'll up the option to $15,000 a year for the next 10 months. And you're like, oh, okay,
So they're paying you just for the idea of making the movie right now.
But we've got. It looks like things are really moving along, and I don't want to talk too much about it because I did that back in the mid 2000s when we had another film deal, and everyone was asking me, and the studio made a poster and all this stuff, and so, but we'll see. So knock on wood, hopefully we'll have one. And if not, I'll make it myself 5 years from now. That's my goal, is I want to get into film. I made a short film about 10 years ago, and it won some festivals, and it was a lot of fun. And I'm hoping now one of my next Kickstarter after the She book, which will be in the summer, we'll launch it around San Diego time, my goal is to be shooting that as a feature film the following summer.
Okay. Mr. Engelhardt, when it comes to story or structure, if somebody's trying to put together their own type of tale, what type of materials or story subjects should they be researching?
Well, it's like the string thing again. I mean, whatever story you're trying to tell, I totally agree with the whole idea of reference. I mean, I went to First Friday last night, which is this arts festival here in Vegas, And walking around looking at all these different artists, I'm thinking, a lot of these guys look like what you'd find at art festivals anywhere. But that's what you got to do. You've got to like, the only way to learn how to do something is to like say, I like that stuff. I want to go in that direction. And the first number of things you're going to do are going to be just like the stuff that you're looking at. It's can you then take it, can you keep pushing it until you get out there to some place that nobody else has gone? But you're going to go through the period of where you're just copying the stuff that you like, you know? And so, you know, what you need for a story is whatever you need for a story. I mean, when you figure out what story you want to do, then you gather the stuff that you need in order to do it. And if at the end of the day you go, gee, you know, this really is just like the thing that I was looking at to start with, that's all right. I mean, don't take that one to Marvel to show them what you can do. But, you know, it gives you a point where you go, okay, that isn't everything that I really want to get out of this. So then you go to the next one. And it might be a completely different story, might be a completely different thing, but you know, it's, I mean, there's the old thing, they say it about writers, but I'm sure it's true for everybody. The only way to write is to write, you know? The only way to draw is to draw. As Billy was saying, you go at it, you keep after it, and whatever, you know, at some point you're going to say, I think I'm good enough. And even then you may go and they may say, no, you're not. But you're working in that direction, and that's, but you know, it's like that old thing, where do you get your ideas? Well, from everywhere, right? I mean, it's like whatever it is that you want to do, don't try to half-ass it. Don't think, well, you know, I'm going to create a science fiction world, but I'm not going to have any water or tigers yet, you know? Yeah. Like, no, you got to do that part. But I mean, that's what it really comes down to for me, is you just got to like start it, just go do it, and do the best you can, and then get the feedback you can get from your friends and everybody else. And if the feedback isn't what you want it to be, then that'll tell you where you need to work. You know?
Yeah, and I'd also say don't be afraid to let the story tell itself.
Yeah.
Because a lot of things I've done with Mark, when we've been creating it, we've come to a point where like Mark will ring me on and say, oh, we've got to kill this character. And we'd never thought of that. It was never in the plan. But you suddenly realise the story is taken over in its own way, and something becomes inevitable. And the thing to do is just accept that and go with the story. Don't feel you have to follow a plan because you wrote down, you know, in issue 1, X does Y. Because I think 9 times out of 10, as soon as you start telling that story, if it's a good story, it'll take on a life of its own.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's, I don't know if it actually works this way with the major companies, but I know one of the reasons that I'm not doing comics anymore, I started out in a period when you had complete creative freedom, and I ended up in a period when they said, okay, tell us what you want to do, we'll give you notes, then you can tell us what the first 12 issues are going to be like. And I'm sitting there thinking, if when I get to issue number 12, I'm just filling in the blanks on some idea that I had 2 years ago, I might as well just blow my brains out. Yeah. I mean, there's no fun in that. So you really, I don't know, again, if you want to work for the big companies, whether you can avoid that kind of approach, and at some point you'll be famous enough that you can avoid that kind of, you know, but it's like you really want to let the stories go, and it's very definitely true. I mean, you can sit there and go, I'm going to do a thing that's exactly like Star Trek, except I'm going to change this one thing. And as soon as you do that, then your character's not going to act exactly like Captain Kirk. He's going to be, you know, and then 3 issues in, it's over here somewhere that you didn't really think about. And I'm totally in favor of letting stories go. I mean, you know, if you're a professional and you're writing and you got to have some idea of like, but the more you can let it just kind of come to you on the fly and go, I really had no idea this character was going to do this, but that's what she's going to do now because that's what she's led to.
It's a lot of fun to have your beginning. You know, I always have my beginning. Yeah. You know, my first act is always like, wow, then what happens? Like, I don't really know. Yeah. But then you know how it ends or how you want it to end. Yeah. And that's because then it might not necessarily end because you have act 2, you know what I mean, of your 3-act play, and that's the most important act. You know, and that's where everything gets exciting. And so and a 12-issue miniseries might end up becoming a 15-issue miniseries because, like you said, that character, you have to kill this character, or oh my God, well, I didn't want to kill him.
That's actually something.
Exciting is the word too. You said this earlier on. If you're sitting there doing it and you're not having a good time, nobody else is going to have a good time.
Yeah.
If you're not into it while you're doing it,
I got an interesting story is that I had Buzz, the artist, draw an issue for me. And he drew this one character so beautifully. Her name is Lady Kaio, and she was just a real minor character. And just the way he drew her, though, I'm like, oh my God, this woman is so beautiful. Now we got to really make her better. And now she's now 20 years later, because she was supposed to die and all this, and she never. And now she's going to be the minister of culture of the Japanese government now. And that she's just she was just very refined, snobbish, wealthy woman of a very long samurai family, and that haughtiness and snobbishness, like you just love it, like wow, because she did have a nice heart, but she was kind of cold, and now she's a villain, but it's about something that you didn't expect just from the way Buzz drew her. I'm like, wow, look at this, and my friend, my editor, like, oh my, yeah, well, let's instead of so-and-so, let's have her do that, and it's that's what's so great about comic books, because it's not millions of dollars, at least publishing your own, or if you're working with an open editorial staff at the time and an open company, and you make that's how you make magic, it's like Kirby, and Stan, drawing the Marvel way, what I mean? Would Stan say, this is what happens, sort of like you, ages 5 to 17 they fight, and then just these phenomenal things come out, are created. Now they're making movies that make $700 million and they net. So.
Well, actually, you mentioned the explosive need for a first act and the need for a good third act. It's been recently explained to me that if you have an ongoing story, if you're not intending for it to end, that can be some of the most difficult thing, because comic books are basically a tremendous second act if you're not looking for an ending. I mean, how hard can it be to keep a story going if you don't have a definitive ending thus far?
Well, that's why you have new writers come in. So you'll get someone new because you might get if you're on Detective Comics number 755 now, and you've been writing Batman for 20 issues, and you're in that second act, because there is. Fortunately, me as a cartoonist, all my stories have always been miniseries or always been arcs.
Mm-hmm.
I've never had just an ongoing series, but that's when you bring in the fresh blood.
Mm-hmm.
But that said, also, what someone posted on Facebook about Walking Dead, about the season of Walking Dead, and like all you have to do is watch the first episode, maybe the center one, and then the last episode of a season, because the other stuff is just like filler.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see it last week, but there's a new group of people.
Yeah.
Some of the
what is it now? Alexandria, the Hilltop, and the Kingdom.
Yeah, but no, there's another group now. There's another one.
Not the Saviors.
It's sort of like they're just some other group of women. I think it's of all women, and they have a compound or something like that.
That's new.
That was last Sunday. Did anybody watch Walking Dead Sunday? Okay, so what happened?
It's a bunch of women.
Yeah, it's a whole new.
Anybody see it? I don't want to spoil it.
I just like the details. It's a bunch of women, like we haven't already heard.
The old guys, like Tosca.
All
Everyone
the men
dies.
have been killed by Negan.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Spoilers.
But then again, you don't necessarily need that,
Right?
Because it seems to me this season, and that person pointed it out, that it is sort of like just filler stuff. So there's your act two to throw up something silly and crazy in your story if you want to throw a monkey wrench in, put them in outer space or something like that. How would that happen?
But that's certainly true. I mean, if you're sitting there and you're aware that you really are kind of treading water, bring in a new group, send them to outer space, do something, to like just change it up, and it'll give you something new to work with. It's when you can't think of anything to add that it's time to go do something else.
But it's also kind of cool that if you have full creative freedom like you had to work with these characters, and you could turn in page 22, and all of a sudden a car falls out of the sky and crashes, right in front of Ben Grimm, I don't know.
Yeah.
Where this now, and you don't even know where the car is coming from. You just
Yeah.
wrote it and said, they're like, oh man, where'd this car come from? And that's a kind of a fun way to.
I used to do a thing I called tossing plates in the air, where I would be writing a story, and it would be telling itself, and I'd suddenly go, if a car fell out of the sky right now, this would be pretty cool. I have no idea why that car is falling out of the sky, but I'll put that in, and that means a couple issues down the line, we're going to have to tie that back in there. But it's like I got 2 months to think about it. I would do that all the time, where I would do stuff because it seemed like a cool thing to do at the time, and that it was incumbent upon me to make it make sense later. But that was part of the fun too.
All right. I don't want to dominate everything. Does anyone have any questions for any of these individuals?
Question.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Tossing plates, content that you just made. Is it pretty much just like a mental note that you write down, jot down, keep it for later, and come back to?
Yeah. I keep it all in my brain. Yeah. You can write it down, whatever works. But yeah. No, I mean, we all have our different stories of time and place and all that. When I was doing those books, I was usually writing a different series, one a week, so I'd do 4 a month or whatever, and I would just, that kept it fresh for me, because I would, I'd go from one book to the next book and pick up that story, and my brain was able to kind of keep all that stuff in there. I didn't have to write it down, but I don't think I ever forgot anything.
If you did, it wasn't good.
The next guy would pick it up, whatever.
All right. Just to be sure, anybody else? Fun crowd. Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, as far as through your timelines of working in the industry, if there ever was a moment that really was almost like a red light for you, where you felt like it was opposition trying to get in your way and veer you off course.
Oh, Mr. Engelhardt had a big red light for a while. He pretty much quit Marvel.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, that's just individual stuff, but
that's not necessarily.
You're talking about stories.
Oh, you're talking about.
I mean, as far as just in general,
overall.
as an artist, as a creative person,
You don't know
where
what
you felt like you were hitting a brick wall, maybe just with life. If there was something that kind of would push them past that.
I went through a period where I forgot how much I enjoyed drawing, and I did find I sort of kind of realized one day I was just getting up and going to the studio. I think, I ought to draw all day again. And then suddenly kind of the light went on. I used to work in a proper job, and go home and then draw until gone midnight every night just because I loved drawing. I thought, I'm actually doing what I've always wanted to do since I was a little kid. Why am I grumping?
Yeah.
And and thankfully I try and remind myself of that all the time. But it's easy to kind of slip into that.
So now you go home at night and be a chartered accountant until midnight?
That wasn't that serious a job. But no, I mean, that was a period where I was just sort of kind of, clocking in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did that too around probably from self-publishing the book and then having other people draw the character and other writers come in and write it and all, because it really got pretty big. And that's probably around 2000 for me, 2000. And even my art started suffering. I could see I see even convention sketches where people I got you to do a convention sketch for me. I'm like, can I see it? It's 2002. I'm like, give me I'll do that over. I'll do another for you for free. Because you become, but I also became, I guess, a businessman as opposed to a cartoonist, which I always was. Mm-hmm. And I was writing, would spend 10% of my time creating, and the rest was chasing after bills or paying bills or scheduling things and stuff like that. And, I guess for, what is it, a left brain person that's okay? Or, I don't know, I'm one of them. Yeah. Like an artist is, I'm that one.
Whichever one's a good one.
So I think I'm a right brain person, I think. I really am. My wife's a left brain person. Thank goodness for that.
When did you start in the comic business?
Well, my first published work was in October 1983. That was Spider-Man.
My first published stuff was late 1972.
Yeah, mine was my first book. She came out in March of '94.
All right, but Mr. Kitson,
so 70s, 80s, 90s, you can see.
Your work on Spider-Man, though, was Marvel UK, right?
Yes.
Okay. Just laying that all out there in case people start digging through and can't figure out where your work is. He worked on the Marvel UK line.
Well,
first?
actually, my name was first in print in Famous Monsters of Filmland, number 151, where I guessed, when it said, who do you guess? They had a photo from a movie, and you had to get, and it was David Bowie for The Man Who Fell to Earth, and I guessed it. It said Billy Tucci. Like, there had to be 100 people that, figured it out. It wasn't terribly hard, but that's my first published, which is probably like 1981 or something. So
I guess on those terms, first published work was in English comics used to be compilations. They'd have 7 or 8 stories in, but I'd also encourage readers to send in jokes or whatever. And I actually sent in a joke when I was about 11, I think.
Oh, really?
But they redrew it, but it still had my name underneath it.
Well, when I was 6 months old.
You won a no prize. I understand.
Do you have like children, and has any of them, copied or downloaded your card?
I don't.
I have children, but they didn't follow in my footsteps.
Yeah,
No.
I do. My youngest son, both my sons can draw. My youngest son, who, interesting enough, is just like my wife, he's terrific at math. I can't do math for anything. And he's a fantastic artist. And comics is his passion. Batman is his passion. So much so that he feels that he's going to become a police officer, and then he's going to graduate, and at night he's going to become a lawyer, and then after he becomes a police officer and a lawyer, he's going to become Batman. And he really thinks he's 10. And he's been a Batman fanatic since he's 2. He's like, no, but Dad, I can be a Batman. And he sees the cosplayers, he wants to build a thing, and he wants to go out and...
He's going to be a cop and a lawyer first. He could be Daredevil.
He's a DC guy, so...
Oh, well, I tried. Yeah.
Is the atmosphere for drawing or writing a major influence? Like where you do it and the people around you?
I suppose, I started out writing in the Marvel Universe, so I certainly, it had to, you could have your own voice, but you had to sort of be in that universe somewhere. You couldn't just go off in any direction you wanted to do. So I had complete creative freedom within that universe, whatever that might mean. So yeah, I'm sure the atmosphere certainly helped shape whatever it is I did, And you had your own universe.
Yeah. But,
Did you mean that, or did you mean the environment you work in?
like where you work, like your studio,
Well,
or
that's
just
what I
your
was.
community?
Yeah.
Both, yeah, just like how the whole area, the people that write the stories for you guys, or when you write it, did they ever, how much freedom did you have? Did that help you be better, more freedom? Or,
Do you mean like feeding, like getting stories off each other, like ideas, working them off your friends and stuff like that? Like other comic artists and writers and stuff like that?
Yeah, because he worked alone. If he started arguing with himself, that would be frightening.
No, I worked alone, but we don't really talk stories much when we hang out, because you live kind of an isolated existence, which is good, so you can work. I don't know if you had studio mates or anything like that.
I've tried sharing a studio, and I just spend more time watching everybody else
Yes.
than actually getting on with anything myself. So I'd work on my own and stay in that.
Were you like nerds when you were younger?
Well, I was certainly totally into comics. I don't know if that made me a nerd or not.
I love how straightforward that is, though. It's like asking, were you pantsed a lot at a young age?
No, I can remember from when I was about 5 or 6 years old, I used carbon paper to trace each of Kurt Swan's Legion of Superheroes.
Wow. Oh.
And I had my own little paper models of them, and I would make up my own stories. And that was for me. That was a great Saturday morning. That was.
You know what I found too, though, is I loved comics growing up, and being an illustrator, wanting to go to school for illustration or for writing or something like that, I was so intimidated because I have a friend of mine who was my mentor. His name's John Tartaglione. He was a longtime Marvel art director.
Sure. Yes, he was.
Yeah, I call him Daddy-O. I loved him, and I remember in college, he's like, Billy, he's called me Billy Boy. He goes, you should draw comics. Now, I grew up with John Byrne and George Perez and, name them, you know what I mean? John Romita, and And then seeing this art, he's like, you should give comics a crack. You should draw them. Like, well, oh my God, look at this work. I said, well, how much I get paid a page? And he goes, well, you could probably start making $25 a page. I'm like, 25? Like, it'd take me a week to draw a page like this, you know? And, but then the image revolution started. I know I'm getting off on a tangent, but talking about you is growing up. And then, so I was kind of resistant to get into it. And then when the Image Guys came out, and I saw a lot of their stuff, I'm like, oh yeah, I can do this. I said, yeah, I can do this, so let me give it a shot.
All right. Does anybody else have any questions? Because I'm sure that the next panel is going to need to start soon. All right. Well, I want to thank you guys for your time. This is Mr. Barry Kitson, Mr. Steve Englehart, and Mr. Billy Tucci.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for letting us eat in front of you.
There we go. That was all done, and I hope you had as good of a time as I did actually meeting these guys. Billy Tucci is always high energy. Barry Kitson, he was just a lot of fun and real interesting to listen to about his work in comic books. And then there was Steve Englehart, who may not have known why he was there, but boy, did he add some levity to the middle. There are still, believe it or not, 7 other panels I have to edit, so you'll be hearing a lot more pretty soon. Thank you very much. I hope you're having a great holiday. I hope you're visiting with friends and family, and I hope you are making some great new memories. Thank you very much. Have a great one. I am Jeremy. Don't jerk and drive. Take care.